I'm Carol Queen, and I'm one of the organizers of the conference, among other things. I'm here because more than anything, to talk about sexuality and how those of us who are bisexual experience that, all the different ways we experience that, to make us remind ourselves that even though we're coming together as a community, which is going to mean a lot of different things, it's going to mean having a symbol and an official color and a whole bunch of new t-shirts that we can wear to parades and things like that, that community, identity community organizing is happening, and it doesn't have much to do with what we're going to do when we go home tonight or what we're going to do in the restroom in the courtyard at lunchtime, that sex is really what brought us here. Sex is what made us come out, or is making us try to come out. And I'm a sex educator, I'm a sex radical, I work in the sex industry, I write about sex, I think about sex, I read about sex, I have sex whenever I can, and I think of it as not only the reason that we're here identifying ourselves in a particular way to try to find community with each other, but also one of the sources of insight that we can have as bisexual people, as sexual people primarily. One of the ways that we can learn that we're diverse, and that's okay, because what we're finding, we just had a workshop on kinky sex, and a lot of people wanted to talk about what other people have labeled deviant, and what they themselves sometimes have labeled deviant. And it turns out that even if something gets labeled deviant, people do it anyway and like it and feel weird about it a lot of times. And as we grow into a bisexual community, we're going to see that happening a lot. Some people do this, some people do that. It happened in the lesbian community, and the sex wars, quote unquote, that happened, they were very incredibly painful for a lot of people. I think the sex wars brought a lot of women into the bisexual community, because once we got attacked for being perverted around a host of other issues, butch femme or enjoying power, sex, sadomasochism, and that kind of stuff, you know, fucking men was just one more perverted thing we could do, and as long as we weren't going to be accepted by our lesbian sisters anyway, we might as well see what that was like. or be reminded that we could try to have good egalitarian and hot sexual relationships with men too, and that a lot of us are trying to step past the place of essentialism that says men are one way, women are one way, you know, good girls and people are one way, bad girls and people are another way, and there isn't any communication between them, and the people who are good aren't bad. They don't do bad things. And look at what's bad, look at the fact that all of us in this culture really got taught that sex was bad. Some of us got taught it in a much milder, sweeter, more comfortable, insidious way than other people, but we almost all are willing to make somebody else wrong. And what that really means is that deep inside we know we're liable to being made wrong too. As bisexuals, we know other people are making us wrong right even this minute as we speak. So trying to accept and enhance and honor our sex and our divergences and our commonalities around that, I hope will help us do what I think the bisexual movement as a whole is going to do in the next 10 or 20 years, just teach the whole community, the whole social community in which we live, about difference and about coming together in spite of difference.
Could you repeat that last statement?
I'll try. I hope that we are going to be able, as in the bisexual community, as it's coming together, to teach the whole community out there, not just those of us who are bi, but our heterosexual communities of origin and choice now, our gay and lesbian communities of choice, that we looked so hard to find when it turned out that we weren't straight. And then who rejected us a lot. That we can teach everybody about diversity and about honoring diversity and about coming together in community in spite of diversity. Because we're not going to be able to establish one right way to be bisexual. We're just not going to be able to do that. And even if somebody appoints themselves the bisexual police and tries, it's not going to work. There are too many of us coming from too many different places. It seems to me that we might have some arguments about that as we get going, as we try to determine, because we're all scared of difference, we're scared of being different, we're scared of the rest of our community leaving us in the dust because we do one thing or three things or 1,000 things that everybody else doesn't feel good about. We need to learn as a bisexual community, first for ourselves, that we're all kinds of ways. In this conference, we're trying to make it as accessible as we can to people of color, people with environmental illness, people with other special needs around mobility and accessibility. We're trying to make it as accessible as we can to people of different cultures and in different parts of the country and different parts of the world. And that's a real good start because we come from all over the place. And we're not going to be able to establish one right way of being bisexual. So what we're going to have to do is learn to like the fact that you can't do that. And really take pride in it, really honor it. And when we do that, we can start to teach that to everybody else. And to me, looking at sexuality is my metaphor for doing that. You know, there are all kinds of other ways to look at it than sex. Sex is just, you know, it's in the middle of bisexual. It's not the whole thing. I mean, we got to look at bi, too. But we're starting to do that, and it's the metaphor that I am most comfortable with and feel the strongest about, because so many people in the sex-phobic society are afraid of their own sex, not to mention other people's. So we got to fight that. We got to always fight that. That fear is what makes us cut our community into different marginalizations, and we drop away one by one if we let that happen. If we can avoid doing that around sex, we can avoid doing it around everything else.
And for those who are in that network, you know what happens? You kind of flash a few words in front of each other and see whether you recognize them, and then you kind of push them a bit to see if they discharge. Anyway, it was instant rapport. It was a tremendous honor for me to be here and introduce Lani this morning. I'm just going to say a few words.
Thank you. Hi, I was born in Canada, on top of everything else. Thank you. I'm sorry this is late. We've never done this before. Could have made it 10 o'clock. Last night when I was making changes for our agenda, I realized that from the stage we haven't talked about the Names Project Code, and that we've been in sort of denial about it, hanging in back of us all this time. And that the reason that it's up here is that there are 3 bisexual people in this world that we know of, and that it's really important to talk about them because they're here. I thought I couldn't get through this without a podium. I've been freaked out for 4 days. Thanks. I feel pretty fine, too. I think I'm going to take this out. Can I do that? Okay, I'm going to go out and kind of point them out, and then that'll help me do it. Okay, this is Marco Vassi's cool piece. And Marco Vassi died in New York last year. He had over 50 identities because he couldn't be confined to any one thing. He wrote and published over 15 erotic novels and edited several small magazines. He was a sexual, spiritual, political adventurer. Okay, I don't see Barry Cohen, so I'm just going to talk about Barry Cohen. He's got you may have read about him out in the hallway, and he died in 1987 at the age of 44. He's best known for the book he co-authored with his wife, Alice Matuso. The book was called Barry and Alice, Portrait of a Bisexual Marriage. It was one of the very first, if I'm not mistaken, one of the only experiential books where bisexual people were talking about their experience. It wasn't a study of bisexuals. His concern throughout his life was to help people reach their full potential. Cynthia Slater does not have a piece up here. She died recently from San Francisco. Her story is also out in the foyer. She died in 1989. She was a mother of 3 and a grandmother. She founded the Society of Janice, the first pansexual S&M educational and support group on the West Coast. She was the first self-identified S&M woman to go public to the world at large, educating and rabble-rousing. Just before she died, she got a Shanti Award, Human Service Award, for her contribution for Women with AIDS resource guide she put together. And lastly, and if I could get the piano moved, I'd really appreciate it if it wasn't like a big deal. Can you see? Some of you can't see, and I'll just talk about it while they're moving the piano. Alan Rockland is one of the founding members of BIPOL, 1983. And Alan was out gay identified bisexual in the 70s. I don't know if any of you remember, actually how can we forget, in the 70s with Anita Bryant when she started the whole wait a minute, I need to back up. Alan was one of the co-editors, I'm a co-editor, Alan was a co-author of the gay rights, what was it called? The Gay Rights Ordinance in Dade County, Florida, in the late 70s. He co-authored that, which it passed, and it outraged Anita Bryant so much that she started a campaign called Save Our Children, which Jerry Falwell got involved with. Alan then spearheaded a campaign to boycott Minute Maid orange juice, and Anita Bryant lost her $1 million a year contract. Alan, as one of in the early 80s, when I came out from the lesbian community as a bisexual, it was like, where are the politics, where are the politics? And my lover at that time, Bill, and I kept talking, we're the feminists, and we met Alan, and we met, oh God, I'm doing part of my speech tonight. Oh well. We met and hit it off and everything clicked. And Alan was a total media queen whiz. And one of the wonderful things about Alan was his incredible chutzpah. Nothing embarrassed him. And he always went for the cameras. He taught me it a lot. So part of Alan's quilt, when we put this together, he died in, when was it? It was November 88. That's right. It was right after the March on Washington. November, right after the March on Washington. So Alan's t-shirt is full of his his piece is full of his t-shirts. It's Anita sucks. Anita, you're the pits. Hurricane Anita, a day without human rights is like a day without sunshine. And